Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something that will shift your mindset and set your spirit on fire. The battle you're stressing over has already been won. That negative plan you fear, that trap the enemy set for you, that sabotage that was meant to take you out, God already destroyed it before it even touched you. While you're worrying about the attack, God is operating on a level beyond your sight, beyond your senses, beyond your understanding. You think you're just barely making it, but in reality, you're walking through landmines that He already diffused. You're stressing over enemies that He already defeated. You're trying to figure out how to dodge darts that He already destroyed. You've been spending too much time analyzing the problem and not enough time trusting the promise. The moment that negative thought entered your mind, God had already spoken a word that canceled it. The second someone plotted against you, heaven wrote a new blueprint for your breakthrough. The battle you're facing right now, it's already won. It might not look like it. It might feel like the odds are stacked against you and your emotions might be running wild with fear, doubt, or anxiety. But what I need you to understand today is that the outcome was decided before you even knew there was a battle. When you feel like the world is against you, know this: God has already secured the victory for you. When we go through difficult times, we tend to focus on the immediate struggle. It's easy to get consumed by the challenges of today. Whether it's a financial issue, a health crisis, a broken relationship, or some other adversity, we find ourselves overwhelmed by the intensity of the situation, often questioning how we're going to get through it. The problem is, when we focus too much on the fight in front of us, we forget that the war has already been won in the spiritual realm. In the very moment the challenge arises, God is already at work, preparing, protecting, and positioning you in ways you can't see. You might be in the middle of the storm, but God has already commanded the winds to cease. You might be up against opposition, but God has already set His plans in motion to ensure that you not only survive, but thrive through it. The scripture tells us in Romans 8:31, if God is for us, who can be against us? This means that no matter what you're facing, God has already equipped you with the victory. You're not in a position of defeat. You're in a position of victory that just hasn't manifested in the physical realm yet. Imagine walking into a battle with an invincible force on your side. You don't need to strategize every move because the battle has already been fought on your behalf. God has already gone ahead of you and dismantled every weapon formed against you. You're simply walking through the remnants of a battle that's already been won. But here's the thing, the more you align your thoughts and actions with the victory that has already been secured, the more you'll see that victory show up in your life. God's plans for you are bigger than your problems. We spend time worrying about what might happen, about how the battle might unfold. We play out worst case scenarios in our heads and try to figure out how we'll handle it. But what if, instead of worrying, we took a moment to reflect on this truth? God has already destroyed the enemy's plan. The problem isn't as big as it seems because God's power is far greater than any challenge you're up against. The enemy may try to make you feel small, unworthy, or incapable, but the truth is that God has already given you the strength to overcome whatever comes your way. You're not fighting alone. You're fighting with the creator of the universe on your side, and the enemy knows this. That's why he tries to get you to focus on the circumstances, to distract you with fear, to make you believe that the battle is too much for you to handle. But if you can remember that the victory has already been claimed, you'll stop living in fear and start living in faith. You'll stop reacting in panic and start responding with confidence. The enemy's plan is already defeated, and that's a truth you need to hold on to. This doesn't mean you won't face challenges or that you'll never have to fight in life. But what it does mean is that the victory isn't up for grabs. It's already yours. You don't have to beg for it. You don't have to manipulate the situation to make it work in your favor. God has already secured your breakthrough. What you're walking through is just a part of the process that leads to the manifestation of the victory that has already been secured in the spiritual realm. Your focus needs to shift from the fight to the finished work. God is already on the other side of your challenge, waiting for you to walk into your purpose, your destiny, and your breakthrough. Your victory is already sealed in heaven. All you have to do is trust and walk it out with boldness, knowing that God has already fought for you. And the battle is not yours, but His. God operates on a level that we cannot always perceive with our natural senses. While we are here, focusing on the challenges of our daily lives, worrying about what's happening in the immediate moment, God is working in ways beyond our understanding, already orchestrating solutions and plans that will manifest at the right time. There is a deeper truth to the struggles and battles we face. They are often fought and won in the spiritual realm before they even show up in our physical reality. God is working on our behalf, even when we can't see it, even when it feels like nothing is changing. When you're in the middle of a problem, the tendency is to look at what's in front of you, your immediate circumstances. You may not see any signs of change, and everything may seem to be falling apart. But just because you can't see God's hand moving doesn't mean He isn't working. It's easy to believe that things are hopeless when the evidence around you says otherwise, but that's exactly the point. God doesn't work the way we expect. His methods transcend what we can comprehend, and His timing is always perfect. What we think of as obstacles, delays, or even setbacks might actually be God's way of protecting us, preparing us, and positioning us for something greater than what we could have imagined. This is why we must shift our perspective and trust that God is moving even when we don't see the immediate results. In the Bible, there are countless stories of God working in ways that were invisible to those involved. For example, when God led the Israelites out of Egypt, they didn't see the full picture of His plan. They saw a sea in front of them, an army chasing behind them, and no way out. But what they didn't know was that God had already made a way. He was working behind the scenes, orchestrating the miracle of the parting of the Red Sea while they were consumed with fear and doubt. When Daniel was thrown into the lion's den, he couldn't see the angels that God had sent to shut the lions' mouths. When Joseph was in the pit, he couldn't see the future that God had prepared for him as ruler in Egypt. At every moment, God was already working, and it was only after the fact that these men and women could look back and see how God had been active in their lives all along. We must recognize that God's work is often in the unseen, and the unseen is often where His power is most fully displayed. When we walk by faith and trust in God's plan, even when the road ahead looks uncertain, we are tapping into His divine ability to move mountains, open doors, and clear paths. The fact that we can't see what's happening doesn't mean that nothing is happening. In fact, it often means that something is happening on a much higher level, a level that our limited perspective can't access at the moment. Think about your own life. How many times have you faced situations where you felt stuck and you didn't know how it would work out? How many times did you feel like there was no way forward, only to later realize that God had already made the way? How many times did you struggle, not understanding why things weren't happening the way you thought they should, only to discover that God's plan was far better than anything you could have imagined? God's timing and His methods are always perfect, and He is always working in ways that we may not be able to see or understand. The Bible reassures us of this in Isaiah 55:8-9, where God says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways." As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. This is not a statement of separation, but one of assurance. God's ways are better than ours. He sees the entire picture while we only see a fraction. He knows what's coming while we can only react to what is in front of us. And because He is a good Father, we can trust that He is working things out for our good, even when we don't have the slightest idea of how or when. You may not understand everything that's happening right now, and you may be confused about why things seem to be taking so long. But remember that while you're focused on the now, God is already moving in the unseen, preparing, redirecting, and positioning everything for your good. His plans are already in motion. What's required from you is to trust that He is working even when you can't see it, and to rest in the assurance that His way is the best way. When God steps into the situation, things change. The enemy might come against you attempting to bring destruction, chaos, and setbacks, but the reality is that God has already neutralized their plans. When God is for you, no weapon formed against you can prosper. This truth is not just a theoretical promise. It is an absolute guarantee. The power of God to override the schemes of the enemy is unmatched. The enemy might try, but when God intervenes, the battle is already won. The enemy's strategy is often to use fear, lies, and manipulation to create chaos in our lives. He wants us to believe that we are powerless, that we are trapped in a cycle of failure, or that we have no way out of the situations we face. The enemy might use people, circumstances, or even your own weaknesses to try to dishearten and discourage you. But God's truth stands firm, and his truth is that the enemy's plots will fail. Why? Because God's will for your life is greater than any plan the enemy can come up with. There's something incredibly powerful in the realization that God is already working to dismantle the enemy's plans on your behalf. The enemy may form weapons against you, but they won't succeed. His designs may seem convincing, his attacks may be relentless, but God has already set his protection around you. The Bible is full of stories where the enemy tried to take down God's people, yet in every instance, God proved himself to be faithful, stronger, and more powerful than any enemy force. Take the story of King Hezekiah in the Old Testament. The Assyrian king Sennacherib came against Jerusalem with a mighty army, threatening to destroy it. The people were terrified. But King Hezekiah, instead of caving to fear, prayed to God for deliverance. In response, God sent an angel to defeat the Assyrian army in one night, killing 185,000 soldiers. Hezekiah didn't have to fight the battle. He had to trust God, who had already defeated the enemy's plans. God not only protected Hezekiah's people, but he completely dismantled the enemy's plot before they even had a chance to attack. Or think about the story of Daniel in the lion's den. When Daniel was thrown into the den, the king's decree was meant to eliminate him, and the enemy intended to destroy him, but God had already intervened. The enemy thrives on your doubt, your uncertainty, and your feelings of powerlessness, but when you recognize that God has already destroyed the enemy's plan, you shift your focus from the problem to the solution. You stop seeing yourself as a victim and start seeing yourself as an overcomer, equipped with divine protection and guidance. Consider the story of Job in the Bible. Job went through tremendous suffering, losing his health, wealth, and family. His friends, his wife, and even his own mind suggested that he had been abandoned by God, or that he was being punished for something he had done wrong. Yet, through all of this, Job maintained his faith. He may not have understood why he was going through the hardship, but in the end, God restored everything that was taken from him and gave him even more than he had before. Job's story is a testament to the truth that God is at work, even when it seems like the enemy has won. God had already destroyed the enemy's plan to destroy Job, and he was using Job's circumstances to elevate him to a new level of blessing. In the same way, when you face trials, it might feel like you're being overwhelmed. The enemy may try to convince you that you're alone in your struggle, that you're not strong enough, or that the odds are stacked against you. But what you need to understand is that God is already working behind the scenes. He is turning the enemy's plan into a platform for your promotion. The difficulties you face are not the end. They are part of a greater process that leads to your breakthrough. The Bible promises in Isaiah 54:17, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue which rises against you in judgment you shall condemn." This is not a vague promise. It's a declaration of God's power and his commitment to protecting you. Weapons may be formed against you, but they will not succeed. The enemy may try to come at you with all kinds of strategies to destroy your peace, your purpose, and your progress, but none of these plans will prevail. Why? Because God is actively dismantling every plot the enemy tries to put into motion. Think about the story of King David. When King Saul sought to destroy David, he tried to use all of his power to trap David, even sending soldiers after him. But despite all of Saul's efforts, David was always delivered. God had already promised David that he would become king, and no matter how hard Saul tried, nothing could stop God's plan. David's enemies were rendered powerless because God's plan for David's life was unstoppable. In the same way, God's plan for your life is far greater than any scheme the enemy could devise. When you trust that the enemy's plan is already destroyed, it frees you from fear and anxiety about what the future holds. The fact that the enemy's plan is already defeated is not just a future hope. It is a present reality. Right now, God is actively at work on your behalf, protecting you from harm, guiding you, and making sure that no weapon formed against you will succeed. The enemy might try to intimidate you with his lies, but when you stand on the truth that God has already destroyed the enemy's plan, you can walk through life with confidence, knowing that no matter what challenges come your way, God is always one step ahead. You don't need to fight for victory because victory has already been secured for you. Instead of trying to win the battle, your role is to stand firm, trust God's protection, and walk boldly into the future He has for you. The enemy may try, but he will never succeed because God has already destroyed his plan. All you have to do is trust and rest in the victory that has already been won.